Welcome back, everybody, to the Pregame Network podcast. This time it's episode 18, joined by fellow lifelong gaming friends and lifelong idiots, Dan and Anthony. We're here to talk about all things gaming. At least that's the shit that we want to talk about. I know that Gamescom is currently going on right now, so that should definitely provide some topic of conversation.
It's funny that you say that because, like, I'm sitting there going, all right, I got all my ducks in a row. I know what I'm going to talk about. And then as you mentioned them, like, oh, fuck, I forgot Gamescom happened. And I watched the opening ceremony, opening night, day, whatever you call it. Yeah.
Before we jump into all that good stuff, Anthony, what have you been playing this week?
I'm not going to bore you with the fighting game stuff. I was obviously doing all that nonsense, all the fighting games for the project that's coming up. Starting this Saturday and Sunday, it'll be the last 2 days where we're doing that massive thing, so we're on the home stretch with that. I went back. I'm just trying to think if there's anything else I played aside from that. I don't think there was. I went back, Dan, and I played one of my favorite games of all time because it's been obviously a topic of discussion lately. Dead Rising.
Final Fantasy. Oh, no, right.
Dead Rising. I went back and I played Dead Rising, and obviously I don't think you ever beat the first one. I did a full playthrough. I did kind of just like a fuck around playthrough.
When the game first came out, like it was marketed in a way that I thought it was going to be something different, and then it wasn't the thing that I thought it was going to be, so I just kind of fell off.
It's actually interesting that you say that. Before I talk about exactly what I did, what I will say, and this is part of the greater topic about Dead Rising, is that the type of game that it is, and the way that it was talked about at events, and then on top of that, the way that it was advertised was different kind of each step of the way. If you go back and look at the trailers and how they were talked about in the pre-release and whatnot, I think in the Should You Play Dead Rising video, I say like it's almost at odds with each other and what it is on the surface, because I asked you the question a few weeks ago. I'm just like, when you think about Dead Rising, what do you think about? And you kind of said like kill zombies. It's kind of goofy. That was like, to summarize what you said.
Main takeaway.
And it's funny, if you look back at the way they talk about it, they're just like, we want the focus to be, how players can kill zombies, and we want them to express themselves. And then it's just like, it's new hardware, we want to put as much zombies on screen. So that was a big focus. But when you get down to the game, it's like ball-bustingly difficult to do fucking everything. And it's like a kind of like a slightly serious tone. But anyway, I digress. That's a whole topic for a different video. But I went back and I played it. For the first time in a long time, I did just a fuck around playthrough where I focused on just, getting kills and doing side stuff, because on the Xbox, I probably mentioned this is the first time I'm like really putting my time into like the HD version on the Xbox. I got it on Steam initially when the remaster hit, and obviously the original was on the Xbox 360. And I just had fun, That
was an exclusive way back when, right?
It was Dead Rising was an Xbox 360 exclusive for 15 years.
Jesus.
Yeah,
okay.
I was thinking about like the Xbox in general earlier, and I'm just like, what major apps did it have? Dead Rising was one of them. It was on that console, just that console, and it stayed that way for 15 years. Very impressive, I guess, to a certain extent, even if it made it a pain in the ass to go back and play. But yeah, so that's pretty much the biggest thing I did. I think I'm gonna go and do a second playthrough now that I have like a fully leveled save file, or not fully leveled, but nearly fully leveled. It's just a matter of how I want to do it. I want to do a perfect run before the deluxe remaster comes out, and I'll have some things to say about the deluxe remaster later. Because, even though I don't plan on paying for it, I will be playing it eventually. It's just a matter of when, because I have a lot of videos I want to do on it and a lot of things I want to talk about. Plus, as one of my favorite series of all time, I got to pay my respects in some way, shape, or form.
Of course.
But, so Dead Rising is really the only thing of note I've played outside of fighting games, so there's that.
Okay, cool. I mean, it's always good to go back to a classic.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Yeah, I've been bouncing around between a couple different things. I mean, I know, like, I've been going strong in Mad Max for a few weeks now.
Oh yeah,
So I'm still,
that's when it's like each week it's like, oh yeah, Mad Max, man, I'm still all about that. Which
yeah, it's
not
still
knocking
a
it. I
lot of
mean, like
fun.
I think I said last week, I'm just like, if it's holding your attention and you're having a blast, go
I
for it. I
finally
mean,
unlocked the V8 engine, so
oh
that's cool.
yeah,
God, the fucking audio design, even between the different cylinder engines, it's so good. Mwah.
it
Chef's
was a
kiss.
game by enthusiasts in a lot of
Yeah.
ways. You can tell the polish, it
Um,
really shines.
I have been bouncing around between a couple different things though. I kind of hopped back into Last Epoch because they had like a new update kind of recently, so I hopped back
Hmm.
in to try that. And I also been playing some more Diablo as well because they have a new season as well. Like I know you're kind of lukewarm on that, but I mean I
I mean,
still like Diablo overall.
yeah, I mean, it's free on Game Pass, and I know people hate it
Mm,
when you say free on Game Pass, but it is on Game Pass, so it's not something it's there to play. I know
yeah.
you're way more geared up for that upcoming expansion than I am,
I mean,
so
I'm not like super duper hyped for Vessel of Hatred, but like I am. I'm looking forward to like the new stuff that they're adding, and then the new class as well. So we'll see how that goes when it comes out. But the other thing that I kind of hopped back into was, do you remember Deep Rock Galactic Survivor?
yes.
Yeah, so I've been playing more of that lately. Ever since I put it down like 6 months ago, or whatever, however long it was, they've added a lot more stuff to it. Like they added like a whole mastery system. So I've been
Ah.
going through, and it's like every gun has a different mastery now, and every class has this. Like they just added way more like replayability to it. So I've been going back
Mhm.
and doing a lot more of that, and it's a really 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 solid time killer, and I think it's a better auto shooter than Vampire Survivors, in my humble opinion.
Yeah, I know we've
Um,
talked about that briefly to a certain point, and I think
yeah,
what you said is pretty good when you say time killer, because
yeah.
like maybe it's
Because
just
like
my
I could just boot
ignorance.
it up for like 10, 15 minutes, and then
Yeah,
if I'm
that,
done with a run, I'll just die. Like it doesn't really hurt anything.
that's once
I
again, it
guess
could
I'll
just
die.
be just my ignorance, but auto shooters as a genre, it really just seems like filler, for lack of a better term,
Yeah,
where it's just
no,
like you need
that's
something to
fair.
kill some time.
I have like 22 hours in it already, which isn't even like that's not even that crazy over
Yeah,
the course of how long it's been out. But like for a game that you're only moving the left stick. That's all you're doing at any given moment.
yeah,
Um,
it's the kind
it's
of
fun.
game where it's just like you're not like in a work environment where you can do something else. You need to kill like 20 minutes, 30 minutes.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
pretty much exactly it.
and that's fair. That's fair.
But that's pretty much the extent of what I've been playing. Like
Your gaming
I
shenanigans in the
honestly
last
have
week.
been what?
Your gaming shenanigans in the last week. That is.
Yeah, like I have had the urge to sink my teeth into like another single player game, like a
Hmm.
story driven single player game, one that I have not played yet.
Yeah.
Um, Going back to like my Steam backlog, like I could always play like Armored Core 6. Like I bought that, I never beat it. I never even put that much time into it, but it was on sale, so I picked it up.
Yeah. I was gonna say I
But
don't
like
even remember you starting it.
yeah, it was very 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 brief.
Hmm.
Um, but there's been I've just had the urge to like start like another single player. I should probably beat Mad Max before I even do that. But
Yeah. Don't
uh,
you've put so many weeks of effort into it. Don't
yeah,
make sure you beat that first. And when you're done, you can look through your backlog, or you can finally message me. And we can sit you down and get you into emulation before we
oh
forget,
yeah,
because I know
I
you
have
mentioned
had
that.
the burning urge to play through Jack 2 and 3. Like I
So we
really
can.
wanted to go back and do that.
Yeah, so that's an option too. So once you beat Mad Max, figure out what you
Yeah.
want to do, and then we'll go from there.
Going on like off of, I'm just gonna use it as a
Yeah, we're
springboard
done talking about
transition.
whatever. So
Yeah, yeah. Going off of like wanting to sink my teeth into a new single player game, I have genuinely been eyeballing Black Myth Wukong. You know of this game?
yes, I'm aware of it. I actually wanted to talk about that game too.
Okay, good. So let's talk about it.
Yep.
What did you want to say specifically about it? Because
So
like I was just gonna say how it's like new and it's like all the rage right now.
yeah, I was going to say the same thing, but I was kind of gonna do it at like you said that's something you want to try. I'm not necessarily interested in that.
Uh-huh.
I don't want to like temper your expectations, because what research you've done is probably more than what I've done. My understanding from the get-go, from its announcement up into recent gameplay footage that I've seen, is that it's a very loose action RPG in the Souls vein, where it's not as difficult as like a Sekiro or something like that, but it's that style of combat, just a little bit more loose. I've seen people.
But I'm fine with that. I just don't like such a fucking strict rigidity of the Dark Souls formula Sekiro is.
Yeah, my understanding is that it's almost closer to Stellar Blade, where it's like there's more action going on, you know?
Okay. That makes sense.
What I'll say about Wukong is I'm not particularly interested in it for just two reasons. When I do my action, I kind of want it to be more action and less action or RPG. There's got to be like a hook in there for me personally. And on top of that, like I don't want to go through the effort of, you know, finding a way to play it on my PC. Other than that, I don't have a PS5. I'm not going to, you know, so I can't. My options to
you
play
really need to invest into a new PC. You really have to get up to par.
Yeah, that's on the horizon. Plus, you know, it's not a buyer's market right now. But that's aside from the point. What I really wanted to talk about with Wukong, you know, is all the kind of things that are kind of going on in the meta around it, so to speak, with like what the discussions around it and everything. Because the lead up to the release of this game was a very interesting one, where people kind of turned it into a political battlefield. Because we talked about this a while ago, how there was a hit piece from IGN written about Wukong and how they made it out to be like a whole sexism thing. We talked about this a while ago, but basically the way the story goes, the developers basically said they were approached by consultation companies, and in their words, they were essentially extorting them or attempting to extort them. They basically said like, hey, pay us for our services or we're going to have our journalist friends basically do a hit piece on it. Yeah, so it's kind of coming back to you a little bit. So people are looking at the current successes, because apparently it's doing amazing numbers right now. You said it's all the rage.
It's sitting at an overwhelmingly positive on Steam, which is very rare. Like, I know that Steam has a massive catalog, but like for a game to have the overwhelmingly positive rating on that platform is pretty substantial.
Yeah. So basically, I'm curious to see where that element of it's going to go. We're going to talk about the game proper in a second, but I'm curious to see where this goes, because there's two things to consider. The first one is it's coming out of China, and I'm not inherently saying things from China are bad. I'm just saying typically reception around things from China can be a little bit inflated or manipulated in a certain way. Like the fact that a bulk of the sales numbers, it's like there's 2 million concurrent players, and then when it's nighttime in China, the players like drop like 1.5 million or something ridiculous.
Oh, really?
And it's like, here's the thing. If it's popular in China, it's popular in China. But I'm thinking a lot of the numbers and a lot of the reviews around it, it's like anything else from China. It's inflated. There's probably some manipulation in there. That being said, I still think it's getting good reviews overall. It's getting sales from outside of China. I think there's a decent amount of popularity there, because the second thing is that this is a whole rebuke against all the DEI nonsense and all that, because these developers said to the consultation companies, they flat out said like, fuck you, you know, you're gonna fucking try to extort us, screw that. And then they went and they made their thing. When they were sending out codes for people to play, like on Twitch and whatnot, they said, hey, don't mention controversial topics, don't mention, you know, X, Y, Z, don't bring up COVID, don't bring up feminism propaganda and shit like that. And it pissed all of these journalists off so much.
No.
So all of the pre-launch stuff was journalists going like, oh, this sucks, the developers are sexist, you know, even if the game's kind of okay or whatever, you know, the developers are bad people. And now that the game is succeeding, you have these people like basically crying about, you know, it's like the success of Wukong means so many terrible things. And I'm just like, all it means is that people are just like fed up with your bullshit, and maybe the Chinese are like inflating this game a little bit, you know? So what I would do, basically, what would I say to you, to somebody who's like has a passing interest in it? My understanding of the game is, once again, it's an ARPG. It's not as grueling as a Dark Souls, to my understanding. It's a little bit more action oriented, and with the combat, because a lot of them don't really play around with like jumping too much, like jumping combat, kind of like a Devil May Cry or a Bayonetta would. I don't want to speak too much on it because, once again, I've only seen so much gameplay, but it does seem a little bit more into the action than the RPG in that particular vein.
Right, which is part of the reason why I was so interested in it.
Yeah, so I mean, I can't offer like a hard recommendation or a hard like get the hell out of there, Dan, this isn't for you. But to me, it just strikes me as like an average game, And and I feel like it's been in development for a while, right? Like I feel like I heard about this game like 4 years ago.
I first heard about it about 3 to 4 years ago. In that range, yeah.
Yeah.
I know it's running off of Unreal Engine 5. I know it's based off of Odyssey to the West, which is part of the reason why I was actually interested in it. I don't know like the story, but I know it's like a good Chinese story. I don't, and even if it's in game form, I would want to
that is
experience it.
That's one of the most popular myths and legends to come from the particular region, to the point where it's like there's been plenty of games and interpretations. Even like Dragon Ball is technically a take on that same story.
Oh, is it? I have no idea.
Like the original Dragon Ball, obviously you're more familiar with Z, but I'm just saying, even though it's not 1-to-1, it takes a lot of inspirations from that. And there was a game, what the hell was it called? Unchained Journey to the West was like a different take on that, if you remember that game.
Yeah, I do actually.
It was all the way back on the 360.
Yeah, that was a long time ago.
Yeah, it's a popular legend from the region, if not the most popular. So I mean, if you want to have that take on it, or at the very least experience, we've played so many games where it's just like, oh, it takes inspiration from like the Greeks, or a lot of the Middle Eastern stuff, or the European lands where there's a lot of stories and games built around that. This is, I guess, your chance to try out that particular flavor. But to me, like I said, just looks like an average game, and everything around it just has to do. I don't know if I want to
spend $60 on it.
Yeah, I wouldn't do that personally. Maybe wait for a sale. Plus, you've got so much other stuff cooking. But I'm not. Nothing I've heard screams you shouldn't try it if you want to try it.
Right.
It's. Like
I'm okay with that.
Yeah, like I said, seems like an average action game, maybe a little bit more under the hood. It's very flashy from what I've seen, regardless of how like the game play underneath matches up with that, because feel and your input is like you. Not saying it's like this. You could be pressing one button and like this spectacular thing plays out in front of you, and that's not really what you want from an action game. But it doesn't. I don't think it's quite like that. And like I said, I think it's just an average game inflated by the fact that China is involved and the fact that its developer has been embroiled in this current messaging fiasco, which we've all been dealing with for so long. So it's interesting. I'll be interested to see, as the dust settles, how much of it is real and how much of it is just China being China and stuff like that. So it's definitely for me, it's a wait and see what happens. That's probably the most interesting thing about it to me, because it's always just struck me as middle of the road stuff. But
well, all right, so moving on from there, I mean, there have been a couple other developments in like our spheres of influence that we pay attention to. Delta Force, I mean, it's a small thing, but they dropped the Hawk Ops subtitle, which I think is a net positive. That was the dumbest fucking name.
It certainly, like, it made it less memorable to me, oddly enough.
Because it's just like, it's like your average forgettable, like, oh, we're cool Special Forces soldiers. Like, shut the fuck up. Just Delta Force is fine. So I'm glad that they dropped that subtitle. They're now just Delta Force. They added basically like Battlefield Conquest to their multiplayer prong of the game. So it really is just like a clone of Battlefield, but like I'm saying that in the most positive sense possible.
Yeah. In what little I've seen, it seems to have a bit more. It's a bit quicker, from what I can tell. Like
it seems more competent than 2042 ever was. In my opinion.
Yeah. I mean, that's a low bar. Surprising.
I'm just saying
for Battlefield. But what I'm saying is, it looks like a bit faster. Like, I'll be honest, I get where you're coming from with the Battlefield, because it looks competent. It looks well polished.
Well, it looks exactly like Battlefield between the menus, the guns, like the way that you spawn into the fucking map. It looks exactly like Battlefield.
You know what game I was getting the feeling of just from the trailer that I saw, and this is not me saying like this is my stance, this is what I'm arguing from, but just the feel that I got from looking at the trailer. It reminded me of Frontline Fuels of War.
Oh my god, that's War. A fucking Do you remember deep that? Cut reference.
That was I remember like playing the demo of that one oil field map that everybody played on, and I'm just like, that's what this game reminded me of. Because
holy shit, that was
a while
wow, I'm just shocked that you pulled that out of your bag of tricks.
Because that was one of the demos I got the most play time out of back in the day, because like that was like everybody, you could do full multiplayer matches in the demo, and then the game came out and it's like nothing was quite as fun as playing on that one oil field map in the demo. It just kind of vanished from sight. But what I'm getting at is like that's what it reminds me of looking at it. Like I can see where you're coming from with the Battlefield stuff, but it just kind of it seems faster and more explosive to me.
It's so similar to Battlefield, to specifically 2042, that they recently announced a new map called Space City. I think it's called Space City, where it's just like a launch pad for like a rocket going into orbit or something. But it's basically, again, if you didn't know the difference, you would think that it's a specific map for 2042 that has a rocket on a launch pad. I don't remember the name because that game was very forgettable, other than the fact that it was so bad that everyone remembered it for being bad. But it like the maps are very similar, but they're better because they're not launching in like this fucking barren state that there's no cover, there's no flavor to the maps or anything like that. It's doing what Battlefield 2042 should have done when it came out. And I think that DICE is in for a really rude awakening when this game comes out. And it's going to be free to play, and it's going to be on everything. And you can have the free-to-play multiplayer version, the free-to-play extraction shooter, which I am... My interest level for the free-to-play extraction, I think it's called Hazard Ops, something like that. My interest is increasing every time I see more gameplay, because it's what I wanted DMZ to become, and I really enjoyed DMZ from Modern Warfare 2. 2. So I'm very, very interested to see where they go with this. And the Black Hawk Down single player campaign, that's actually a premium product. Like you have to pay $40. I think it's $40 to play that, which I'm very much okay with. You know, you want to have the multiplayer and the extraction mode be free to play, and you're going to have microtransactions. We all know that that's coming. That's fine. But I'm okay with paying for the single player campaign. And they already said that they're already working on their third season of content. So this is going to be like a genuine offering in this FPS space that people are really hungering for, like a game that Battlefield 2042 should have been when it launched. And that even though it received a lot of support post launch, it couldn't recover from the damage that was done when it first came out. So I'm very, very, very interested to see how this progresses. I already signed up for the playtest. I'm just waiting on my email or my code to get into the actual playtest, because it's going on now, but they're not accepting any new applicants. So I eagerly await to see what this game is going to be like, because I have a good feeling about it. I'm not holding my breath or anything, but I have a good feeling that it's going to be a competent first-person shooter that I could sink some hours into. And then once the extraction mode comes out, I can't wait to dive in headfirst in that, because you know me in extraction modes. I dig those things.
Yes, you're definitely into extraction modes attached to competent shooters, not so much extraction shooters in general. I will say, like, I mean, it seems like a very reasonable buy-in. I actually like the structure, and I feel like more games in this kind of caliber should play around with pricing structures like that a little bit, where it's just like core components where you're just playing the game and, you know, enjoying it, are like free because they can do that at the size. It's like free to play, and then buy in aside from cosmetics, which you mentioned they're going to have, different stuff like that with the cash shop, but then it's just like, oh, you like the game and you want to play it a different way that we've kind of constructed, and then you buy fully into the game that way. I think that's a good way to play around with that kind of buy-in.
And for what it's worth, I think the way that they're handling their specialists with the abilities, I think it's better than the way that 2042 handled it from the get-go.
I mean, it's
they seem to be putting way more emphasis on the core gunplay and the overall gameplay loop than like the abilities that that these operators are based around.
What I'll say is it's inherently a better system because Battlefield shouldn't be playing around with specialists to begin with. You know, you have your classes, you have your kit building. So I mean, just by default, they're in a better place to play around with that because they don't have like pre-existing expectations and formulas to respect. So like you tell me they have specialists, like I don't roll my eyes immediately because let them do that. It's a new game, it's technically it's a reboot. They don't have those expectations.
Right. So I don't know. I'm very curious to see how this whole thing progresses and to see what else they have in the store, which I guess is the same thing, a different way of saying see how it progresses. But I have semi high hopes for this, and there's really no strings attached because it's free to play. So I could just jump in, try it, and if I don't like it or it's a piece of shit, then I don't have to, no sweat off my back. So I'm happy about that.
There you
go. Moving on from Delta Force, another game that I think warrants somewhat of a brief mention. Starship Troopers has gotten some like news updates. The console launch is finally growing closer and closer. I think it's coming out in October or November. But it seems like they have really been working at this game, and within like the community of people who would play a game like Starship Troopers Extermination are the same type of people who have already bought and played dozens or hundreds of hours of Helldivers. And seeing as how Helldivers has fallen from grace as much as it has, like I think that so Offworld is the studio who's developing Starship Troopers.
Okay.
Offworld could not have asked for a better series of circumstances to happen to Helldivers right now. Especially with the 1.0 launch like right around the corner, because it's still technically in early access right now.
Yeah, that's right.
So it's coming out October 11th on console. On PC, you could pay the early access fee and get in right now. I will say, from what I've played, like the bones, the foundation is there. It needs like structure around that to have it be like a game that multiple people would jump into. Now, obviously, Helldivers is third person, Starship Troopers is first person, so it's a little bit different as far as overall gameplay offering there. But I mean, they are doing stuff a little bit different, which is cool. There's a lot of base building elements involved. There's different game modes you can hop into. Not like different, like Helldivers has the different missions, but like in Starship Troopers, it's like either tower defense or you can go on like a bug hunt in like a hole and do different objectives in there. I haven't played in a while, but like that's what I have seen so far. But it's looking very, very cool. I'm curious to see where this goes as well. And something that I think is really neat is that they made this proprietary technology where like if you kill a bug, the corpse doesn't despawn; it'll stay there.
I can appreciate persistent like battlefields and stuff like that.
Yeah. So especially just like the movie, the corpses will pile up and like you can walk on them. That's that's neat. I like that.
That's what I was going to go to next. So it's like it kind of plays into the not the IP but like the world and like what you expect from the movies is like kind of like almost like I don't want to say like the game, but like I think World War Z, where like the zombies are just like toppling on top of each other and like, you know, while they're coming at you.
Well, yes, but in World War Z, like the bodies don't stay there. Like in
No.
Starship
I'm
Troopers,
saying the expectation from like seeing like that particular IP. You know,
okay,
it didn't come through. But I get what you're saying, where it's like, you know, it plays into it where
it's almost
the
like a
bugs start
different
coming
sort of mechanic. Like if you mow down a whole horde of bugs and their bodies pile up, like other bugs either have to go around that obstruction or climb over it. The same thing for you as a trooper. Like you either have to go around that obstruction or climb over the mountain that you just created, because that's now a part of the environment. I just think that's a cool little touch, especially for this type of game.
Yeah.
So I mean that's Starship Troopers. I mean there's been a bunch of things that were announced at Gamescom over the past 2 days.
So, like, how much of Gamescom did you see?
Well, because of where I am and what I'm doing right now, I haven't really. I've seen things in passing. I have not like kept the weather eye on the Gamescom horizon, as it were. I did see a new trailer for Killing Floor 3, so I'm very excited about that. I mean, like there's a whole thing in the Killing Floor community right now where they're moving to like specialists, right, with skills and shit. People are not happy about that. I think I've brought this up at least once before.
I know that was one of not like a specific like, oh, we nailed it kind of thing, but like I know that in our early talks about Killing Floor, because of how things had trended in Killing Floor 2 post-launch, I was worried about how they were going to handle offerings and balancing and just the nature of specialists. No, but I mean in general, like it trickles into like the gameplay proper.
Right. No, I remember this conversation. Yeah. Okay. I mean, it's possible. It's still possible. I have no idea. But they showed like a 5.5 minute dev diary or something. Just like explaining behind the scenes how they make the game, blah blah blah. The gameplay itself does look really cool. They didn't really go into any detail about the specialists or how the new system is supposed to act. So that remains to be seen. But from a purely a gameplay perspective on the surface level, from what I've seen from this new trailer, it looked like classic Killing Floor. Like they're very big on like the characteristics of the guns themselves and like what happens when you shoot a Zed and like the body parts that fall off or the chunks of meat that you blow apart and whatnot, depending on the caliber of the gun. Like if you shoot them in the chest, their bodies like fucking split in half. Like it's all shit that I would expect from Killing Floor. So I'm excited about that.
Because when we talked about Killing Floor being announced, the third one being announced, I thought to myself, I remember back in your apartment, we were way back, you were talking about, oh my god, can you believe the amount of frames and the reload animations and all that kind of stuff.
A higher frame rate when it's in Z time.
and when 3 was announced and we were talking about it, I'm like, what are they going to do next to like kind of show that kind of like focus on like the gun and certain things about it. And I guess actually instead of just doing like small damage, medium damage, large damage as you would expect from like just guns in general, like balancing around them, I guess adjusting for caliber would be that next big
in
thing.
this same video they did mention that like they're adding weapon modding into the game, which is a huge deal for this game. But you can also change like the internal components so that you can change like the same way that COD does it, I guess, like change the caliber of the gun or change like the lower receiver or whatever. Yeah, exactly. And I think that's great. I'm all for that. So and another thing that they mentioned that they added was persistent corpses and persistent blood. So not only will the corpses stay around like in Starship Troopers, but when you shoot something and like blood splatters on the wall, the blood doesn't go away. That stays there in the environment for the entire length of the match.
It's actually interesting that you mentioned that, because I'm just like, that's another one of like those small polished things that was like possible like 15-ish years ago that like people just don't bother with. Like I think the last game I played, and I'm sure there's a game in between then and now that has it, I just have it on the mind. Dead Rising does that. Like it had very of the time like realistic blood effects where it's like you'd hit, it would take a second to hit the ground, and it would be there until you left the area. So that's like a small effect, including that many games, including the remaster of Dead Rising, tend to neglect. So I'm glad that a game like Killing Floor, which is very much, it's got that one thing that it does, good guns, go in, just kill a lot of zombies. So taking that playground and those maps and making them more like visceral and responsive to your input, your game, your current history in that match is a step in the right direction in my book.
Yeah, I'm very curious to see what this whole specialist thing is, because like I said, people are not happy about that. It kind of goes against the core DNA of what made Killing Floor, because from the beginning they had like main perks, right? Like which I guess you can make the argument that was kind of the same thing as a specialist. You didn't have like a skill, but like the commando would always have like faster reloads or more ammo or a more precision damage multiplier or something like that. But now I guess they're transitioning to specialists. So like you have an ultimate ability and cooldown, which personally I'm not too crazy about that. Like for Killing Floor as a game, I don't think that fits with its core DNA. But we'll see what happens. Like I'm probably gonna buy it regardless because I fucking love this franchise and I'm a sucker for horde shooters. So we'll see what happens. But that's something that the Killing Floor community at large has been pretty vocal against. Yeah. So we'll see what happens with that.
I would hope so. Like I don't want to say I'm skeptical, but that franchise and that developer is kind of in that like it's you do cool things, but I don't necessarily 100% trust you where I'd go out and buy blind, So I'm hoping, as we get closer.
Tripwire has been pretty good with most of the things, if not all the things that they have developed. So as far as I'm concerned, like with Killing Floor 1 and 2, they've been home runs both times. So as an individual, I would go out and buy Killing Floor 3 with little to no research. But that's just me.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, that's good. That at the end of the day, the root of that decision is in each individual. Me in the recent years, I've been much more of a skeptic. So I'm predispositioned to scouring each part of your development until I'm comfortable or until I get like a really good recommendation. So it is what it is.
Yeah. All right. Well, moving on from Killing Floor, that's one of the many things that was shown off at the Gamescom. I mean, God, fucking what else? I'm sure there was plenty of things that I'm missing.
I don't want to do a huge deep dive about Gamescom just because it's not as big as the other events we've talked about, but we can rapid fire a few things and just talk about some of the things I remember from it if you want.
Yeah, go for
it. So they opened with Borderlands 4.
Oh, yeah. Duh.
Yeah.
That's right.
I mean, between what went on with 3, I know you liked 3. I was not interested in it at all. Maybe it's possible that, and I hate using this term because I don't think this isn't an inherent thing that happens in games. It's possible I've grown out of Borderlands, or I never liked it that much.
That's very, very possible. I like Borderlands 3 because it was more of 2, but with like better systems.
Yeah, I hate using that phrase. I just don't have a better one for it because you don't age out of games. You don't age out of certain things in the gaming space. Like if a game is good, you can enjoy it regardless of your age, even though young kids probably shouldn't play mature games. Whatever. I remember
Anthony, if we had that attitude when we were that age.
I'm of the mind that we went through it. I closed the door behind us. That kind of like no. I'm a much older man now. Not quite as old as my soul, but like I'm still up there, and I'm saying kids shouldn't be playing.
Nothing is as old as your soul.
Apparently not. But anyway, Borderlands 4, it's just a teaser, really nothing. I do find it funny that this is hot on the heels.
It exists. We're working on it.
Yeah, and it's hot on the heels of the fucking movie, which I am so happy it's getting destroyed.
The atrocity that is that movie. I don't want to watch it.
Yeah, I have a few things not to say about that specifically, but around the talk around it, which we'll get to when we're done talking about Gamescom, which will only take like a couple minutes. Let's see. After they showed Black Ops 6, not much to say about that. Just more single player stuff. We're getting it for free technically.
I'm actually really looking forward to Black Ops this year's Call of Duty.
So here's the thing. we're gonna play it. We'll probably have some good times with it. It's no skin off our bones. We have Game Pass already. My thing is, it's been a long time since I've been the guy that's like, I gotta scour every trailer, you know? Like I used to be like,
well, the only last time I did that was like Modern Warfare 2.
yeah, like I used to watch the trailers, look for guns in the trailers so that I knew what we were dealing with back then. I'm far beyond that, so it's like whatever. I'm gonna play it eventually. I don't need to scour the trailers anymore. There were a couple other things. And there was Goat Simulator. We don't really care about that.
Oh yeah, remastered Mafia, the Old Country.
Well, yeah, Mafia the Old Country was like the big surprise at the end. I'm interested to see what they do with that. If it's more like Mafia 1 and some parts of Mafia 2, it'll probably be really interesting. I actually started the remaster, but I didn't talk about it just because I really have put no time into it.
I've been meaning to download that and try it.
Yeah, like I mentioned, I think you'd probably get something out of it. They showed something for Persona, which it's just a small little tease. As somebody who enjoys Persona, even I wasn't like, I'm like, why did you bother showing this? It's just an optional boss fight. There's some other cringe shit. It's just stupid stuff that like will
Digital Extremes new game. You know who that is, I assume.
I know the name, but what did they announce?
The guys who made Warframe.
Yeah, but what did they announce? Did they announce something?
Well, their new game Soulframe is like a Warframe, but like fantasy. It looks terrible. I don't think it looks good at all.
Really?
Yeah. Like if you go and watch the gameplay trailer, it looks rough. I don't know what they're doing. It doesn't look smooth whatsoever.
I'll have to take a look at that at some point.
Yeah.
Xbox finally got one of its dreams fulfilled. After like the biggest. What year do you remember off the top of your head when Genshin Impact came out? It's been a while.
Shit, that was at least 5 years.
Yeah. So and like Xbox passed on it, right? And ever since then, they've been like, we wanted our own Genshin Impact. Well, Genshin Impact is just coming to Xbox now. That was like a little thing that they showed off. That'll be in November. I might try it just because I have a lot of friends that like put time into it, but I'm not a gacha guy. I doubt I'll do too much in it. There was a lot of gameplay showings of pre-existing games like Monster Hunter Wilds, the Dune game, Civilization 7.
Yeah, the Dune game, like, I don't know how I feel about that. You know how I feel about Dune, right?
Yeah.
Like, I really like that universe. I thought the book was great. I really enjoy Dune. I don't know how I feel about the Dune game. It doesn't look like something that belongs in the Dune universe, if that makes sense. Like, it's too... Oh God, what's a good word for this? It's too like
too removed,
over the top. Yeah, perfect.
Oh, okay.
It's too removed.
Okay.
Like I know it's a game. I know that they're trying to make like a playable universe MMO thing out of this, but I don't know if it's Dune. You know?
Okay. I mean, I have done very little research into the game, so I don't know a lot of the behind the scenes stuff. But it almost strikes me of like this new movie came out, and you know they did the 2 movies, and it's like I don't want to say it is because once again I haven't looked into it, but it almost strikes me like the game came out to kind of capitalize on this newfound popularity, and it's possible because of that there's like some identity issues going on in there. Like I said, I haven't really looked into it because like it got announced, it was like a big teaser thing, and I'm just like, this ain't for me. I'm not big into the Dune universe. The game, I can barely tell what's going on. You know, maybe later when they stop, because both times I've seen the game, it's all cinematics or mostly cinematics, and I'm just like, I don't know how this game is. All I know is that there's a lot of set pieces in it. Like you gotta.
Well, they just came out with a new trailer for Gamescom that actually showed like a decent amount of gameplay.
But the thing, I was watching it, I still couldn't tell what the fuck it's about.
Oh,
that's the trailer. I watched Gamescom. I don't remember most of it because it was just like a blur of like nonsense. But I did watch it. Yeah. So yeah, Dune, Civilization 7, and Monster Hunter got gameplay. There was Peter Molyneux showed up. I was fucking surprised. I didn't know what he was working on. It's the first time I saw him in a while. He's making a game called Masters of Albion. And my first thought,
like RTS.
Yeah, and I said the first thing I said to myself, I'm like, isn't Albion the world in Fable? Doesn't he not like own that? And then like some article came out where he's claiming it can't be trademarked. That's a whole other fucking thing. But I just found that funny. It's a god game. Have you ever played a god game?
No.
It's like it's a breed of RTS where like you're essentially instead
I
of
don't think so.
You have you ever played Black and White?
Ever hear of Majesty?
It sounds familiar, but I'm not remembering it.
I think this fits the bill, but it's really hard to explain. Like, you're basically in charge of your kingdom, and it was like a city builder almost. I've never heard of the god game genre.
So when you look at RTSs, you get city builders like SimCity, right? Mm-hmm. You get, more traditional RTSs like an Age of Empires. God games are meant to be played in a way where it's almost like you are a god. Like, it's less you are managing things and telling people what to do, which you still do, but you're essentially playing as the deity influencing the world. That's where that's the most literal interpretation. There's obviously different branches and subgenres, so to speak, within that, but that's the idea. And this one, it's so weird to me because what he showed off, it's like, oh, you can make these buildings, then you can go inside the buildings and customize the buildings, and you can customize the people, and you can go all the way down to the ground level and make food that your guys eat.
I saw the trailer. Yeah, I know
so
what
you saw that.
about.
Yeah, so it's like you can like customize and interact with most of the things in there, and I thought that was very impressive because that's something that like a lot of it, like that was something that kind of popped up back in the late 2000s and was played around with it in the early 90s, and it's like, okay, we're waiting for the technology to get better so that you can do more in this vein, and then nobody capitalized on it, and now he's doing this. But my thing is, I looked at that, I'm just like, maybe it's just the showing, maybe it's just because he's more focused on making the game and less presenting the game, but it came off almost low budget to me. Like, it almost came off like a mobile kind of game. And I thought that was disappointing because I'm just like, this guy, say what you will, I think his reputation's overblown, but he is like a quote-unquote visionary in the space who's done all these different things. And I was just like, I haven't heard from you since Project Natal. The Kinect, when that was coming out. Like, he did some kind of like interactive thing that never came out. And I'm just like, I haven't heard of you since then, and this is what you came out with, and I think it's a little underwhelming, but it will fill a niche because nobody's doing those games anymore. What else? They showed Indiana Jones, which I don't give a shit about, but they announced it's coming to PlayStation. I could
not be less interested in that game. Like, it's pretty fucking crazy.
Yeah,
I love the movies. I really could not be any more disinterested than I currently am.
Yeah, I don't know. It'll be on Game Pass, so you can try it.
Great,
but yeah,
I'll probably give it a shot just to see. But like, my hype level is non-existent.
Yeah, so I guess we'll see what happens with that. I mean, it's I'm more interested in the implications of it coming to the PlayStation because we've talked a lot about Microsoft's strategy.
Oh yeah, they're bringing that to PlayStation. What the fuck is going on there? They just kind of gave up on first party development.
I don't want to go super deep into it because that's a whole other conversation, but I think it kind of attributes to something they've talked about, and I kind of filtered and kind of like said like, I think they're doing this, where I said to you a while ago, if they were constantly making good games nonstop, right, it would make sense to do essentially what Sony's doing with their games and then later coming to PC, where you put a game out, it's exclusive for 6 months to a year, and then you put it out on another platform, right? But I think they're kind of jumping the gun because they're basically saying it's going to come out in December, and then they announced it immediately and said, oh, it's coming to the PlayStation in the spring. Like, it smells of either somebody at the top putting pressure, again, on the Xbox studios, which I think is what's happening, or somebody panicking, right? That maneuver. Because, once again, they don't have the lineup to keep feeding Sony. It's just that's my only take on it, really. They really don't have that. It would be one thing if, like, we have Gears coming, we have Halo coming. There was rumors that Forza was going to PlayStation. Was that confirmed? I don't think it was confirmed, but people were saying that was a thing. Yeah, like, I don't know. I don't want to get into this whole fucking conversation about Xbox again, but like, I don't think that's a great move. They'll be making money, it's whatever. And it is very fun to watch all like the Sony diehards talk about it like in a completely different light, like the second like an Xbox game is coming to the PlayStation, because all those Xbox and PlayStation both have their like diehard zealots, and they are just like they're clowns. I have no like. It's one thing to have brand loyalty. It's another to not have a personality outside of that. Like me and you, we've been on Xbox for like a great deal of time. We've enjoyed that ecosystem, but there was never a point in time where we got.
I always had a PlayStation. I always enjoyed the PlayStation titles.
Yeah. I would always go back and buy a PlayStation eventually. PlayStation was my main console until we got up to
the 360.
Yeah, I had the Nintendo 64, then I had the PlayStation 2 and the GameCube, and then I jumped onto the 360 train, and then eventually, much later, I got a PlayStation 3. And back then there was enticement there because the exclusives and whatnot. But anyway, console zealotry is weird. Fucking cut it out already. But Microsoft should be coming to play. You know, they should be that figure that these fanboys think they are. Yeah, so just to wrap up Gamescom, there were two other things that stuck out to me, and they're not necessarily in a good way or like, ooh, I'm excited for this. Do you want the negativity or the positivity first? Which one do you want?
Give me the negative first. At least we can end on a positive note.
So, secret level.
Oh yeah.
What did I say?
That trailer was cool. I liked the trailer.
It's just gonna be slop. I'm sure you're gonna like it.
Right.
That's not a knock against you, because I know how that sounds by me calling it slop and then immediately following it up with you will probably enjoy it. My whole thing is like that style of like animation and storytelling I just can't stand. I think it's shallow and obnoxious, and it's really just there for people to go, ooh, what are these visuals? I mean,
maybe to a point, yeah. Like, there are certain stories or shorts within Love, Death, and Robots where I'm like, that's what you wasted your slot on, you know? But there are other stories where I think are really, really good that, like, I kind of wish it was expanded upon, but I'll never get it.
Yeah. So my whole thing about Secret Level, and there's a couple of red flags. One, it is by the guys who did Love, Death, and Robots, and I didn't really care much for that show. Two is like the lineup of games they're going to be visiting. It's like mostly like
a lot of them are really like they're very fucking like, detached from each other.
Why the fuck are they doing an episode on Concord?
Yeah,
why the fuck are they doing that? They're doing a fucking hyper realistic Mega Man. I'm just like, it's gonna suck. They're doing Pac-Man, it's gonna suck. They're doing all these different games.
Warhammer.
Yeah, I mean, the Warhammer one looks kind of good, but it's like hard to fuck up. Warhammer, just make sure you're killing shit and doing really over-the-top action, brutal, visceral stuff. You know, that's all you got to do. One thing that is interesting that a lot of people are pointing to is two things. One, the fact that Armored Core is getting more content via that. That's pretty neat. Because Armored Core fans have been kind of like waiting for that kind of thing, so hopefully they get a neat short story. And the other thing is like one of them is just quote unquote various PlayStation Studio games, so people are just like they have pie in the sky hopes. Like, does this mean we're getting a follow up to PlayStation All Stars in this show? I'm just like, it's possible. It's just gonna be whatever. So I don't know. I just wanted to point that out because it took up my time on the stage, and I just looked at him just like I hate this.
My time.
This is the kind of stuff, it's the kind of show or movie that it's just like I don't want to sound pretentious. I hate shallow shows and shows that are just meant to capture the attention of like, oh, you know this thing, so you're going to watch the show and clap when it shows up on the screen, and we're going to have these grandiose visuals and these set pieces, and everyone's going to sit there and just clap and go, oh, wow. And then like talk to me about how great it was, and then 5 months down the line I'm still going to remember it, but the person who told me how amazing it is isn't going to remember it or even give a shit about it. I hate that so much. That
is the burden you bear, Anthony. Okay, let me just rip that Band-Aid off.
It sucks so fucking much. Like, I'm not of the mind where it's like I'm not the uppity guy at the top who goes like, well, I just know better and you're just a consumer, but it's like I get so annoyed by this shit. So annoyed by it. On a different note, the last thing I want to talk about Gamescom, it's not a major thing. Did you see Marvel Rivals?
I know of it. I didn't see any of the new stuff.
So the only thing I'll say about it is they showed off Captain America and Winter Soldier.
Okay.
And it's Marvel Rivals is literally just third-person Overwatch, and why I'm excited about it is because it'll do
disinterested.
It'll do a substantial amount of damage to Overwatch because it looks more fun than Overwatch. There's more cool things in it than Overwatch, and it has the old Overwatch model of all the heroes are free. You don't need to play to earn them. I'm hoping
something.
The biggest thing is like I might try it just because it's third person. I'm interested in trying it, and just the fact that it's free to play. But I'm mainly curious to see like what kind of damage this does to Overwatch, because Overwatch is already dealing with a lot of nonsense because the developers like just seemingly haven't known what they've been doing for a long time. So, but it's very flashy, looks very neat. I'm not head over heels for it, but it's free to play, so I'll try it.
All right, that's the most you could ask for, I guess.
Yeah. So I don't know if you have anything else to talk about. I have two things, but if you have anything else to talk about, this would be the time to get it out.
No, I don't think so. Most of the stuff I wanted to talk about was from Gamescom.
Okay. So just I'll wrap this up with the two things I want to talk about. It shouldn't be longer than 10-15 minutes tops. The first thing is just to kind of follow up because we're getting closer and closer to the Dead Rising Deluxe Remaster. Since we last talked about it, and by talked about it, I mean since I last shouted about it because all the gameplay stuff was coming out and people were getting their codes. Two things. One, there more footage of things that I haven't seen before has kind of come out, and my opinion really hasn't changed all that much. I still think that a lot of the things look inferior, even though there are some parts of it that look really, really nice. They bungled so much, most of the voices aren't that great. A lot of the additions to dialogue really just seem in service of making characters walking tutorials or giving unnecessary guidance or props or positive shit. It's if you climb in that boss fight where I was bitching about the yellow paint and the yellow arrows or whatever,
I remember.
If you follow those arrows and you climb up to where you can actually fight the boss proper, one of the characters says, "Hey, good job, keep it up." I'm just like, why are you talking to me? We're in the middle of, that's not something you would say. I don't. That just seems like it's they could not put you go bowling and you can play with the bumpers up. They could not raise them any higher. You're giving me strikes. Just relax. But I credit where credit is due. Some parts of the game look really, really nice. Some of them are, but some of it is just flat out inferior to the last game. I'm gonna end up doing a pre-release reaction kind of video just to kind of summarize my feelings on it, and then like I said at the very beginning, either like I said, I'm not paying money for it, but if somehow I get it gifted to me, or if I have to take to the high seas to get it, I will play it and I'll do some more comprehensive stuff just because it is a favorite of mine. But the flip side of this is just I know I mentioned a lot of people reached out to me when all the negative stuff started coming out, right? One guy I know, I don't want to dox him, but he was in the Dead Rising Discord. He's been in there for a while, and I mentioned to you that the Dead Rising Discord and the Dead Rising community was always I don't want to say I respected it, but it's just I liked the fact that it was smaller, it was kind of contained, and they were very protective of the series DNA. He sent me some screenshots and he's been giving me updates, so I've got a guy on the inside, and he's been telling me a few things. I don't know exactly what he does in there or what his role is, but he did reach out to me, and holy shit, what a shit show. Oh, yeah. I'm not even sure how to describe it. It's not quite denial, even though that's part of it. It's somewhere in between spiteful enjoyment and delusion. Basically, what happens in that community, at least once a day, is sometimes, even multiple times, they'll be talking about the remaster, and at random, someone in the conversation will either go out of their way into the wild to find a negative video or comment about the game, or they will just invent somebody to get angry about. and they will use whichever one they come back with to derail their own conversations and like just start shilling for the remake. Like they'll be sitting there, they'll be just talking.
These
I don't
things
know,
happen?
because they're out of their fucking mind. Like, because it has to do with the censorship. That's like the biggest part of it. The reason I say that is because, like, before the censorship made itself known, everybody was kind of having normal conversations about this game, right? They were talking like, oh, you know, this looks okay, this doesn't look okay. You know, how you would approach something, right? The second censorship got involved, all the crazies got activated. I don't know, like, I'm sure some of them were, like, waiting in the community and they just have bad opinions, and the second they have their opportunity, they just bring them up. But it's basically, it's like, this whole aspect of inventing people to get angry about is literally, like they'll just be sitting there like, oh, you know, I think the game looks good, but can you believe the guys online who just like they just need to have sex in their game, otherwise they're just never happy. I'm just like, these screenshots looks like a fucking insane asylum, and that's like a death knell. Like, I don't want to know what, regardless of how the game does, I don't know how a community really recovers from this, because like it's pretty rampant in there, and it's getting to the point where like dissenting opinions are getting kicked or just leaving, and it's just like, that's like a bleed you don't want. We talk about talent bleed in the industry. You don't want sensible bleed from like a community. Sensible bleed. Because if all you're left with is like the diehards and like the shills and the hype men and the cultural people in there, like that's just a recipe for disaster. So yeah. I'll have my eyes on both the game and the community, but I think this is the start of something bad for it. I'm
sorry.
Yeah, I don't think the game is going to flop. I think it's going to sell reasonably enough for Capcom to not shelve the series permanently. If it flops, no skin off my bones. But I will say that word of the censorship and other issues with it, because it's not just a censorship issue. I harp on censorship because you know how important it is to me, but there are other issues with it that I was talking about way before the censorship even reared its ugly head. But we'll see what happens. Less than 30 days to go. I'm sure I'll talk about it at one point beforehand and then again afterwards, but that's just a status update on what the hell's going on with Dead Rising. And to kind of end this, I just, you know, obviously you've been busy, but have you noticed a narrative shift out there recently?
In what?
Just in general, like how people
do a little better than that.
In how people talk about games that, you know, either invest themselves in these weird policies or look below average than what somebody should expect, or, you know, the more pretentious cinematic games and whatnot.
I'm not gonna bullshit you. Probably not.
That's fine. I don't blame you for it. I've seen basically how people talk about cinematic story games or games that have these policies that, you know, we talk about, all these weird, you know, DEI shit or consulting companies and whatnot. People have gone, like in the discussions around them leading up to release and afterwards, people have gone from fuck you, you just have no taste and it wasn't never for you and all that whole spiel, to well, I liked it, where's all the hate coming from, you know? And normally from the developers it's followed with, please give us a chance. You know, normally all the places that are destroying your hobbies, they just want to shut you down and shut you up, and then we'll live without you. But now it's like, hey, come on, why don't you try and play the game? Why do you hate it so much? I even hear this about the Dead Rising remaster, but it's basically the Borderlands movie, Silent Hill 2, Dead Rising Deluxe Remaster. I see people trying this with going backwards to The Last of Us Part 2 and the show, or maybe just in service of the show. I saw it for Battlefield 2042. I see it for Assassin's Creed Shadows. It's like maybe things are changing in the background, or it's starting to hit where it hurts, like all this, you know, kind of like word of mouth getting around, like, hey, you know, remember that thing you liked and it got ruined? Well, that's what's up next for this, you know. Just, you know, people, there's a rise in skepticism, and in the inverse, all the hype men, shills, and developers are now more like, the second there's like even like a small amount of pushback, they start kind of changing the script, and they're just like, oh, you know, maybe it is for you. Why don't you just come try it? You don't have to hate it preemptively. So I don't know. Maybe we're starting to see, some pushback between developers realizing you can't just keep, catering to the people and who say fuck you to the old fans while also saying fuck you to the old fans yourself. You can't you can't stifle creativity. You can't, develop games in a way that is not just for pure entertainment and pure visions and stuff like that. So maybe things are changing just a little bit.
It's probably for the best, honestly.
No, I mean, yeah, it's got to change eventually, but like I think about all the different stuff that we've talked about, and it's just like, it results in something like a Wukong, like we were talking about earlier, where it's just like, it's like, it's they said screw you to the people who were trying to extort them, and it's like now they're just selling a large amount, so
yeah.
I guess we'll see what happens. I just figured, there's no real focus.
Perhaps.
Yeah, no, there's no real focus with that one, but we try to end with some positivity, and the positive note is that all the people that fucking hate you will, if you turn your back on them because they fucking hate you, eventually they will realize, oh shit, and all the people who are like, claiming like, oh well, it's not for you anyway, we'll just buy it, aren't buying it, so it's we'll see what happens with that.
Anyway, on that note, I think this was a good conversation.
Yeah, and look, we ended on a positive note. I didn't scream once the entire time.
Love it. Progress.
Yeah. We'll see.
All right. If you're listening, thank you for listening, and we will see everybody next time.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Bye.